I wanted to prove ownership of this old truck, all that would be necessary is for me to produce a fancy-looking, decorated, stamped, and signed piece of paper known as a title. A title is a physical demonstration of a legal status. But what if I lived in ancient Mesopotamia, say around the time of Jacob and his father-in-law Laban, where there is no paper, and say there was a dispute about my ownership? What kind of physical evidence would I need to prove it? Welcome to Building Metal, brought to you by Baird & Wilson Sheet Metal. In ancient Mesopotamia, when a man is interested in marrying a woman, he or his father paid a bride price to the family of the bride, which is typically worth around a year's wages. The father of the bride is supposed to save this money as a dowry to secure his daughter's future on her behalf, especially if something should happen to the groom. When Jacob arrived in Haran, he was a refugee with no money, so he offered to work to pay Laban the bride price for his daughter. When it was all said and done, Jacob would end up paying an exorbitant 14 years of labor. The cost of Jacob's labor should have been saved up by Laban and used as a generous dowry for his daughters, for their future, and to help support their children. Under normal circumstances, this would have been their inheritance. But this didn't happen with Laban. The two wives of Jacob play an important role in the history of Jacob's descendants. Leah gave Jacob 6 sons and a daughter, as well as 2 additional sons through her surrogate maid Zilpah. Yet it was always Rachel who had Jacob's heart, but she struggled to have children, resorting to providing 2 sons through her surrogate maid Bilhah. Finally, she gave birth to Jacob's favorite son, Joseph. Years later, she would also give birth to Jacob's youngest son, Benjamin. These 12 sons would fulfill the promises made to Abraham. Their descendants would become a great multitude of people, the 12 tribes of Israel. Their names in order of birth are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and eventually Benjamin. Yet, from the beginning, despite there being 12 sons, there will essentially be 2 dominant tribes, 2 nations that arise from these tribes, one which will descend from a son of Leah and another from a son of Rachel. The daughters of Laban were angry with their father for squandering their inheritance. When Jacob told them that God wanted him to return to Canaan, the 2 sisters, who were normally at odds, were in total agreement. They said Laban treated them like foreigners, that he had sold them like a commodity. So do whatever God has told you. In the past, it was Jacob's mother who had told him 3 times in Genesis 27, "Do what I say." It was also Laban who manipulated his will in Jacob's life for 14 years. Here at last, Jacob will stand up and instead do what God says to do. So while Laban was far away shearing sheep, Jacob packed up all his possessions, his livestock, and his family, and left for the land of Canaan without telling Laban what he was doing. Also, before they left, Rachel stole her father's household gods, which were called teraphim. These were often small, pocket-sized idols, sometimes used for divination or thought to bring good fortune. They also served another purpose. These idols were the physical evidence for inherited or purchased property. They were the title deeds to Laban's wealth. 3 days later, Laban discovered that Jacob, his daughters, and his grandchildren are gone. But the thing that he seems most concerned about is that his household gods are also missing. He set out with an entourage of relatives who would be the jury to the evidence of this crime, to help him exact justice on Jacob and to retrieve the teraphim. After 7 days, he reached Jacob's vulnerable traveling caravan in the hill country of Gilead, just east of the Jordan River. But God, the presiding judge, spoke to Laban in a dream and warned him not to harm Jacob. When Laban finally caught up, he begins his direct examination of Jacob. "What have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you. But last night, the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you longed to return to your father's household. But why did you steal my gods?" Laban ends his opening argument with the thing he is really concerned about. Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid, because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it." Now, Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. Laban then searched through all the tents for evidence, but could not find his teraphim. In Rachel's tent, she had hidden them in her camel saddle on which she was sitting. When her father approached her, she explained that she couldn't stand in his presence now because it was her time of the month. So Laban didn't have access to the saddle and didn't dare try to look. The daughter for whom Laban never gave a wedding celebration and who did not inherit her dowry, did in fact inherit her father's ability to deceive. And from him she stole the title deeds for the properties she thought she deserved. It is at this point that Jacob stands up to his father-in-law and gives a long rebuttal of how many ways he has suffered because of the mistreatment of Laban. Laban counters to Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet, what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne?" Humiliated that he cannot find the teraphim, Laban cannot convict Jacob, and he no longer possesses the legal instrument that would have let him formalize a claim on Jacob's household and wealth. He has no legal leverage. So Laban makes a proposal. "Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us." Jacob and Laban arrange a heap of stones that will serve as a legal reminder, a witness of the settlement they make that day. They both agree that they will never go past the witness heap with the intent of harming the other. Jacob swears by the God of Abraham that he cannot claim ownership east of the stones, nor will he cause any harm to Laban's daughters. And Laban swears that he cannot harm Jacob or claim anything to the west of the stones. They call the place Mizpah, which means watchtower, because the Lord will be the witness who watches whether either side breaks their oath. The covenant gave both sides legal proof of ownership, a boundary of protection, and a peaceful resolution. The teraphim, the household gods, had been nullified by the God of Jacob. They had been replaced with a publicly witnessed heap of stones in the hill country of Gilead. Another ownership claim with physical proof was also made that day. It wasn't a claim from Jacob or Laban or even Rachel. It was God himself. And the physical evidence of his legal ownership was obedience. This time, Jacob wasn't manipulating the outcome, and he wasn't bending to the will of his mother, his father, his uncle Laban, or his wives. Jacob instead was doing what the owner of heaven and earth had told him to do. And the proof of God's ownership is doing what he says. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. And he left and returned home. Here are some tools to take with you. Number 1, God has the title deed to your life. Number 2, who you obey is the physical evidence of who owns you. And number 3, freedom comes only through obedience to the one who truly holds the title deed. We'll be back again soon with more tools from Building Metal.